We have arrived, sir. Best make this a quick trip. Paradise isn't the place you want to be for long. The Sin virus is rapidly spreading its tendrils across the city. Your mission, burn it out. Purge it at absolutely any cost. Good hunting, sir.
So, I played Turbo Overkill. Let me tell you about it. This game opens hard, with an 80s intensity, and if you let it, it will grab you, and it's not about to let go. There is so much to talk about, but first, you do have to be willing to just let loose, let your imagination run a bit, maybe indulge in the lighthearted approach to what it means to go over the top. I mean, it's called Turbo Overkill after all. This will get ridiculous. We are oozing personality here, and even just looking at the menu, you can see the passion bleeding through in this 80s retro futuristic cyberpunk aesthetic. That carries through to the old school action game opening of the first level. It's nearly straight to business. So before I crack on, I would like to say, if you're new to the channel, consider sacrificing a few clicks to the greater algorithmic gods and dropping a like, comment, maybe even subscribe. This channel is still in its infancy and every click does count. Right, so you're dumped almost straight into the action. If you have questions about what's really going on here, well, I mean, you have come to the right place. It's just going to take a minute before we start piecing things together. I like that. I'm not a huge fan of intro exposition dumps. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I want to be invested in what I'm doing a bit first. And while it may not work for every game or many genres, it does work here, and we certainly get things going very quickly. In fact, the first level opens up with a very quick cutscene just to lead you on a little bit. From there, guns blazing. Check it out. The storytelling and the gameplay are both going to evolve over the course of the game. The storytelling begins with short cutscenes and audio logs and evolves into mid-level events and environmental cues. The gameplay will be a much more dramatic shift, and demand more and more of the player, by adding to an ever-expanding arsenal of weapons and abilities and an expanding pool of enemies. Now, I would like to zero in on this point. This is because oftentimes when a game wants to expand on the playstyle throughout the course of the game, you're left playing a completely different game by the end. This sentiment can make for a great first playthrough and kind of hinder the willingness to go back for another run-through. I'm happy to say, though, that Turbo Overkill doesn't really have that problem to the same extent. For me, at least. This is because of what I want to call a unique way of balancing your access to features. As is the status quo, guns are introduced throughout the game, of course, and most of them you'll have before completing the first episode. There are also a handful of mechanical upgrades, such as a wrist rocket for an off-the-cuff burst damage, or the grappling hook that not only gets used for platforming, but for grabbing and most often pivoting off of enemies, or the bullet time. Or the chainsaw arms that you charge by sliding into enemies with your chainsaw leg and use to become the most dangerous melee weapon imaginable. This is topped off with unlockable, interchangeable upgrades that not only offer to tweak your gameplay in the not-so-subtle ways to suit your playstyle, but that the timing in which you receive them is perfectly timed to the proportion of the challenge. What balances this out so well, in my opinion, is the fact that the absolute core of the gameplay is intact from the moment you hit the ground. High mobility, plenty of verticality, and lethal amounts of speed and velocity are the core tenets of gameplay. You do not have to unlock the chain sliding, it's already there. You also don't have to unlock double jump, it's already there. There's no icebreaker in this conversation between you and Turbo Overkill. What I'm saying is that from the first moment, gameplay has already got a lot going on and it already feels extremely fluid. Also, one very specific thing I think truly elevates the way guns, skills, and modifications are added is that nothing, not one thing, has only one specific way to deal with it. One thing comes close, we'll talk about it, but everything can be dealt with in your own way, your own style. There are optimal ways to deal with everything, sure, but there's no railroading here. Suboptimal is not defunct. Alright, so let's dive right in, shall we? Okay, so I already discussed the opening to the first level, so we'll take it from there. First, there's a few enemies and the introduction to one of the ways lore is popped on you, in the form of audio logs. I mostly stopped to listen to them, but they will dampen the sound of ambient ass-kickery in the case you don't want to lose momentum. After that, though, you will get a series of pop-up tutorial messages the first time through to explain some of the basics. For the most part, it's just stuff that's more niche or unique to Turbo Overkill, like chain sliding. The game won't force your hand or tell you twice though, so that's pretty nice. When it's done getting you up to speed, the first level breaks off the training wheels for the rest of the game. Sure, you get pop-ups when something new is added, but the kid gloves are off before you're done with the first level. You also get introduced to Sam, the AI that powers Johnny's car and basically acts as his entire voice when interacting with anyone else or having an internal monologue kind of thing, as well as Sin.
You dare stand before me, you who is but blood and dust.
The big bad AI that's corrupting the entire city and spreading a digital virus and brainwashing everyone. So, social media. The second level begins by introducing vending machines for upgrades and shows you a splicing machine where you can change your loadout of upgrades when you have some. There's another key player introduced, the exec.
Johnny, hey, where's the fire and brimstone, man? We need that virus purged now! Terratech stocks are in free fall! We can't pay you if we're broke!
She's like your boss, and angry about everything, and about as helpful as decaf coffee. But the game begins to explore some of the platforming, which will be a recurring theme throughout. It's passive to begin with, and there's a slow cook before it's all in your face. We'll get there. By the end of the third level, you have most of your weapons, all of your workhorse weapons, the ability to run on yellow walls, and the knowledge that you can open up chests with unique upgrades found in the environment if you find a key nearby to crack it open with. So, after everything is sufficiently introduced, we need to hit up the bank. You see, we know Sin is up to something in the bank, don't know what, doesn't really matter. We have something resembling a reason to kick ass, and that's all we really need. Plus, they wouldn't let us in the No Chainsaw Club. Time to go scrubbing through downtown looking for Paradise Bank, which is on lockdown, so we'll need to release the lockdown first. See, Paradise is the name of the planet we're on, because anybody naming a planet Paradise is really kind of asking for this sort of thing to happen. You can pick up a message on the way, of the cops, the regulators, trying to get Johnny to come back, but he won't because now he works for a more powerful force. Corpo privatized enforcement. Street cleaners. There's gotta be more to that, aside from the fact that, the regulators are a joke nowadays, as you'll see on your way to lift the lockdown, but the door's blocked off. Yeah, Sin has the bank locked up with these flesh tentacle biomasses. They're a bitch to cut through, so we're gonna need to find some weak points to let it ease up. First, however...
Sir, a complication. Sin's tethers have clogged the door to the bank. You will need to manually destroy the tethers. Sending you the coordinates now.
Awesome. Sin even offers a great opportunity to test this micro-missile launcher out by ambushing you when you try to leave the Regulator HQ. So it's time to make a couple of pit stops, one at a hologram rave club and the other in a cinema, to bust the tentacles at their weak points.
Congratulations, sir. We can now get inside the bank. If you wanted to splurge on upgrades to, say, your car, now's the time.
No thanks, Sam. Every time I fix something on the car, something else breaks. And worse. Let's upgrade the guns instead. You get jumped on your way into the bank, but that's just par for the course in Turbo Overkill. The point is that we finally made it in. What's the point of getting into the bank? It doesn't matter because we're just doing what the exec says.
I'm starting to think that relying on a bunch of increasingly augmented street cleaners to ensure the continued dominance of TerraTech might be a slightly misguided plan.
Yeah, that one. Actually, the goal of each level so far is to shut down a Sin core in each of these areas to fight back against Sin and weaken its control over the inhabitants of Paradise. In fact, we're just minding our own, busting up Sin thugs when we find ourselves in an aquarium, and the illusion starts to break apart. There's a sweet and metaphorical glass-breaking, screen-shattering mechanic used in the plaza, before the game starts opening up on these areas. Nice use of enemies and placement. This will be a consistent theme. At this point, you may be a little curious as to why Johnny is half man, half murder machine. That's great because it's the perfect time for a little bit of insight.
You must have known you'd end up on the other side of the barrel at some point, Johnny. Oh, pucker up and kiss this for me, Johnny.
Sir, we have arrived. The local biocore is located...
As we snap back to reality, it's back to business as usual. Time to bust up the Apple Tree apartment complex to find another Sin core this time. Got to keep up to date. That gets me to thinking. Weapon mods are sold at these vending machines so long as you have the weapon and have hit the milestone to unlock the ability to purchase it. Most of the time it just means adding another function to the weapon like an alt-fire mode. Check back with these things often. Any upgrades you haven't bought yet but have unlocked will be at each one going forward, so you can safely pass on an upgrade and pick it up later too. Same goes for the augment vending machines for your passive modifiers. Okay, so back on track to
the need to punish those responsible for our pain.
Most of the time, a new enemy is added with a little bit of fanfare and then the only opportunity you get to engage them one-on-one, which does two things. It gives you a showcase of what they'll do to you and demonstrates how much damage you have to inflict to kill them. Getting to the top of this apartment complex is going to present a few challenges along the way, not least of which is a massive grinder you'll be tasked with navigating. Yeah, the platforming is expanding, and right now it's all in service to reach the top to shut down that Sin core. Meanwhile, Sam has been working a different building a few blocks over, and let's jump to it. Screw the roads, just hop from building to building on your way to pick him up. It's actually probably significantly faster given the traffic. Spider-Man might have been onto something. Time to clear this last rooftop off. Now it's time to take a drive. Yes, a vehicle segment, the first but not the last. This is your car, and Sam's home. It controls very naturally and comes equipped with chain guns and rocket launchers. You also get a sense of heft when moving it around, and doing so kind of jerks the aim of the chain gun, so moving and shooting simultaneously becomes a little more difficult at range. Cool thing about it though, is that if it becomes too much of an issue, you can actually park the thing in midair and stand on top of it. It doesn't ever have to be an issue. Next stop is now there's a tip. Right, Artifact Zero, the big living Sin core. Traffic is a bitch, though, so the only viable solution is to cluster truck your way up the road. I mean, I get it. You ever try to drive through Cincinnati during rush hour? This is a less crowded version of that. It also doubles as a train level before it's over, and you know how those end. And this one is ending with a spoiler warning too. Hit up the timestamp to skip past all this because, believe it or not, we're only getting started with this expedition. After climbing out of the wreckage on the train, we actually find that we're not too far off course on our way to— hey, you only get one. Anyway, yeah, Artifact Zero was on the train, and we tried to nip it in the bud back there, but now we got this monstrosity to deal with. The whole fight itself is quicker and easier than a lot of the arenas leading up to it. That's not to say we've really succeeded in stopping it. That was episode 1, just the first, and it's also literally only half the levels, because if you go digging in each level and find all the collectibles, each level offers up not only a gameplay modifier, but another secret unlockable level. I didn't get them all, and we're not going to go into it in this video, it's plenty long enough as it is, but yes, each level has another level packed away in it that you can visit from the main menu. On to episode 2, more guns, more glory, more sick upgrades, and more enemies. There's even an option very early on to choke the spread and increase the rate of fire on that pump action shotgun, immediately elevating its relevance. And with friends like Ripper,
I really thought I'd feel better after killing Johnny Turbo. I mean, maybe I should have done it in a way that extracted more physical and psychological pain. The blast.
it'll be great to get a leg up.
What was I thinking?
She's technically a co-worker at this point. You both work for TerraTech until like 5 minutes later when they put a hit out on you for not answering the phone.
Johnny Turbo's our primary target. TerraTech execs have been trying to reach him since the surge. But wouldn't you know it, that tongueless prick's gone silent.
Same thing happens to me when I forget to turn the ringer back on, bro. I feel that. Now, about that more murder part. You get introduced to corruption zones a little later that lock you into 1 or 2 weapons with the trade-off that you also have infinite ammo during the process. The first one is basically to showcase a new weapon, the plasma rifle. At least these moments aren't too frequent. The next level begins with it getting blasted off the rooftops by the Eye of Sinron and ending up in a toxin refinery only to get stalked by the first of your former compatriots.
This contingency thereafter better be worth the price of admission. Just one more data set to go.
The broody guy is Maul. He'll be a bastard later.
Got the first one?
No, we wait till we've got all the pieces before we proceed.
I think he's been here, eh?
And,
You got it, boss man.
meet us at the second data array when you're finished.
Johnny! Where's Johnny?
But first, let's get acquainted with these shield pricks. The pump-action shotgun's secondary fire will bust through their shields, but let me tell you, you can actually kill them any way you see fit, provided you get around the shield. The boomstick's secondary is just the direct and optimal method. It is the method I chose most often too, because it can be quite tricky to get past them as they're fairly agile with those shields. The whole synergy of it is pulled off very well in Turbo Overkill, I feel. This is the extreme form of an enemy having an optimal method of dispatching them while simultaneously being the minimized version of making sure everything still can work. It's the perfect balance riding that edge and not overusing it. You'll spend the rest of this level climbing up and out of the pits of this toxin refinery. There's a new enemy that protects the other enemies until you kill that one first. Dispense copious amounts of violence before a few platforming segments that'll get you closer to where you're going. Before you leave the toxin refinery, don't forget about Jazz. He's the first of your old friends to get in the way. Really, he's just gonna zip around this arena and fire pot shots at you when he stops. If you really want to make it easy, just pull out the chain gun, swap it over to the flamethrower alt, and hold the trigger. He's really bad at doing things fast with his ass on fire. Once you pop the top though, you can drag his ability out. It's bullet time, but this is Turbo Overkill, so it's turbo time. Make of that what you will. Still, once you max paint a whole room, they drop extra goodies for you to pick up. TerraTech is that big corporation that hired you to be a street cleaner in the first place. They're also the ones that want you dead now, but even their buildings are full of brainwashed sin thugs. About a third of the way into episode 2 is when they really start hiding those secrets quite well, and some of them they will show off to you, and you'll have no way of reaching them when you see them. Like this one here I spent a good 10 minutes trying to get to, only to realize you can't even get to it until you get the grappling hook. Oh yeah, you get a grappling hook in this level. Shit is banging. And I went back for that cassette tape. I wouldn't leave him without it, damn it. However, if you didn't like the platforming before, boy do I have news for you. So yeah, there's a reason why Johnny is so pissed off and why he keeps doing his own thing regardless of what he's been asked to do or ordered to do. Now don't think too hard about this, but when he got shot to pieces, he suffered some brain damage, and he needs a brain transplant to get his old brain fixed and put back in. That's what's in the case he keeps carrying around. So basically think Cyberpunk, but unreasonably more metal. I mean, it doesn't need to be realistic or reasonable for that matter. Have you seen this ever-escalating parade of violence? All it needs is to be awesome. We've got that in spades. Hey there, Jimmy. So you take the concept of a sniper rifle and merge it with the old school arena shooter concept of telefragging. This is the telefragger. It's precise when you fire it, but when you zoom in it becomes something completely different. Transportation. But hold that thought, because the Sin version of the Eye of Sauron is watching, and it's gonna watch us road rash our way out of here. This hoverbike, man...
Sir, we cannot outrun that thing on foot.
This hoverbike, fluid, ridiculously fluent controls, comes equipped with a chain gun, a laser cannon, and the best part, chainsaws. You can chain slide on a bike while you're firing an SMG over the side. Come on! Best vehicle segment of the game, right here. I'll admit I didn't use the laser cannon much, but instead enjoying the simple pleasures of chainsaws and bullets. After that badass segment, the arenas start tightening up, and they'll really put your ass on a belt sander if you're not prepared. In fact, the following level is fairly arena heavy just to drive the point home. Also, I believe the turbo time causes you to deal quite a bit of extra damage. This is also the level where you get the Ion Blaster, or this game's version of the BFG. It also doesn't really work like a BFG, you kinda have to keep the aim trained at the general vicinity of enemies for it to do the intended job. Still works quite well though. With all that in our system, there's another TerraTech street cleaner to take care of.
Johnny Turbo, as I live and breathe, and I am living and breathing, but you, on the other hand, with all that chrome tech shit, you got more of a little zap and a kind of a buzz than a pulse these days. Am I right? Am I right, Johnny? Ugh, flesh, so overrated. Is that what you think? So, here's the thing. You might be a hideous pile of metal and, guts, and I might be the bitch who made you that way. But we gotta hit pause on the whole mortal enemies thing. What's going down is much bigger than us. Maw's out of control, and we're the only street cleaners in this system who can stop it. So, bestest buddy, what do you say? Do two unlikely badasses team up? Save the... Oh, you are dead.
Ripper. She tries the diplomatic route. This fight is cool, much better than Jazz was. It has phases where you're deathmatching with her, followed by these enemy horde phases, and it alternates a few times before ultimately locking the both of you to the same loadout in the final deathmatch phase, where you have to best her with her own signature kit. She doesn't take losing well, but neither did Johnny. Shit, while we're at it, let's go after Maw too. He's got this nice arena event all set up and everything, and we've just warmed up the old deathmatching skills. However, Maw doesn't play by the same rules. He's got all kinds of moves that nobody else has had so far. Thing is though, he's kind of the slowest of the bunch, so he makes up for it with these wide area of denial attacks where your primary focus needs to shift to dodging them. He'll take you for a few rounds in the arena before it's time to put him down. But we can't leave just yet. He has to return the favor first.
We've made it, sir. Now all we need to do is...
I hope you weren't needing that.
Ma, what the fuck is going on down there? Give us back.
Unlimited power. That should be reserved for gods. I cannot have you getting in my way.
Well, he's on a power trip. That's fine, that's cool, so are we. After a nap then. A 2-year nap. Things sure can change kind of fast. Sin is the one that brings you back. The malevolent, big, bad AI monstrosity that has been the enemy so far.
Yes, I take it back. With an offer like that, we're clearly the best of friends.
Only because Maw became more powerful, so while Sam and Sin argue about who sucks more, we're granted a second chance. But now with twice the problems, and welcome to episode 3.
You're afraid of Maw. He's getting too strong, even for you.
The first thing I noticed was new upgrades, and all of the upgrades you get in episode 3 are a bit of an improvement on what you've seen so far. Augments and weapons both. With one wildly powerful exception. You'll see it. So there's also a new mechanic that requires you to have one of the augments on to use it. These purple things in the environment that you can use, kind of like a grappling point, but instead of latching on and using a kind of momentum with you, you just kind of use them from a distance and instantly teleport to them and kind of bounce up in the air. It's weird, but it's not all that different from doing the Tarzan with the grappling hook. It just gives you more points to do it with. The defecation has truly hit the oscillation, folks. Now we're crawling through an active war zone with comm chatter that's popping off in the background, and with newer, tougher enemies sprinkled in for flavor. Then it happens. The most overpowered augment in the game, hands down, both hands, put them down right now. Enraged is the augment that gives you bonus damage when you switch weapons. Now listen, it is not a small bonus. If you're actively swapping weapons, and I sure was, you're gonna enjoy being able to upkeep what is at least double damage indefinitely. There's a little bit of a cooldown on a per weapon basis, so if you just roll through most of your arsenal, it'll be fine. This actually goes to highlight a bit of an imbalance on these augments. I think there's about half of them that just aren't gonna see much use, because the other half have so much of a marked impact on gameplay. You don't need 50% more ammo if you can just make all the ammo you do have do 100% more damage. It's better ammo economy and a quicker time to kill. Yes, I do understand that the more impactful ones come later in the game, but they certainly just override the old ones into insignificance. That's not to say it's not actually pretty cool most of the time, like slapping a chainsaw on your other leg for double the chain slide damage. This also marks the time where the developers were comfortable enough with their skills to get cocky and do weird stuff, like trap you in environments where the walls and floors can bite you. When done right, stuff like this is the game challenging you in new and unique but not completely unfamiliar ways. You already know I'm gonna say it hits the mark here. All in favor of busting a big biocore. Not Sin, but Maw this time. Alright, time to head out. The rest of this level is carried out mostly in vehicle, in kind of a confined environment, so you're tasked with shifting this chunky flying car through tight spaces. Guess it's time to break hearts. Then we can assault this flying barge that so thoughtfully incorporates the platforming and the combat mechanics together as one cohesive event. I swear some moments in this game seem like the developers actually trying to challenge the stigma that first-person platforming sucks, but there is a reward for doing it here. First, this. Love it. Chances are you're going to know what this is if you're watching this, but this is a classic homage to the opening of Doom 2, this room right here. Anyway, once inside, it's just room-to-room combat for a bit until...
is to use the transfer cable housed in your central cortex. Of course, we can try another method if you prefer.
Everything is a chainsaw. Johnny Turbo is a living chainsaw. Most of the time you charge these with chainslide kills and activate them for Turbo Overkill's version of Berserk mode, but they're cool, and they're really one of the weaker upgrades due to the infrequency of being able to use them. You know what? I found a good target for testing these bad sumbitches out.
Johnny Turbo, back for more punishment, I see. Not what I would call a fair fight.
Change of plans. This next bit is about taking out the anti-air guns, but the twist is that you're basically on Paradise's version of the Vegas Strip. This level isn't particularly challenging, but it does involve some neat, high-class scenery. Even something as simple as a bridge between buildings is just popping with this upper crust luster. Then you got this splicing machine that...
Stick that hand in me! Splice now! Come on! You can splice more than that! I said, splice today, you fucking bitch!
And then this happens, and you gotta kill it. To be fair, this is Turbo Overkill, and that's how we solve problems here. Seriously, everything is fancy. I don't belong here, and they won't let me out. Back to problem solving. Once we bust the last anti-air gun, Sam can get the car back in to pick us up, and we head out to meet back up with the car like...
Get up under the door.
Heading to the starport now. Take a moment to appreciate the view, sir. This may be the last time we see Paradise. The plan from here is straight.
We're getting that ride into space, damn it. Once out in space, the level design and scenery take the opportunity to shift dramatically, but appropriately. Chunks of various bits of what used to be a spaceship construct platforms at first, just floating there in zero gravity. Well, zero gravity for the environment, low gravity for us. It's weird like that, until we hit a portal that takes us inside a ship much deeper into space and gives us a power fist and a buffet of targets. After that, though, it's time to just soak in the atmosphere a minute. Welcome to the final stretch of the game. One of the first things you want to do is meet up with the good guys, the Vermilion Front. Not the cube ships, but the other ones. No worries, just ride a nuke most of the way there, but drop it off at a cube first.
Systems are down. We're in deep shit.
This would really be a good time to make a miracle happen.
vitals are like nothing I've ever seen. I have no idea what he is, but he's loaded with sin tech. Strange. He doesn't appear to be hostile.
Strange way to explain this. Anyway, they're having a situation with being boarded, so once you help shovel the shit and actually do meet up with them, the captain is quite eager to have a discussion about options. One of those options involves this. Now we're using a power shovel. In all seriousness, it is another vehicle segment. It's pretty decent, and it's the most powerful thing you'll get your hands on in the entire game. But it doesn't live up to the bike. You gotta blast your way through the ship toward an escape shuttle that can send you all the way to Vector 4, a Sin-controlled space station, and they know what you're up to, so they'll even use one of the big cubes to try to stop you. Again though, this mech, it's not much of a contest. In fact, honestly, the vehicle sections are the easiest in the game, and that's by a large margin. That's not to say they're not fun, just they're not a challenge. Anyway, when we get to finally get off this ship, well, that's pretty good timing for us, pretty grave mistake for Sin for letting us live. They tried. So the entrance to Vector 4 kind of reminds me of a specific kind of lighthouse. Unlike Bioshock, we're not going to a place that has an entire ecosystem built in. Nah, we're going to a garden of violence. While it's probably just an excuse for the devs to put you in even more precarious positions by removing a lot of your footing during combat, this place does have a nice view. And that's the caveat of this place. The encounters don't ramp up as hard here, but you're not going to notice that right away. What you are going to notice is the way you have to carefully navigate the arenas at Mach 10 because you have no cover, and that's going to directly challenge your awareness of where you can and cannot land. The funny thing is, this section doesn't get used for as many platforming puzzles. Instead, it's near constant hostility. So constant, in fact, you might not recognize the whole synthetic day-night shift that occurs while you're on the station. Twice. It's day again before you leave this map to head out to TerraTech HQ. That's where we're headed to put a stop to Maw and Sin.
It would seem there's a price to pay for this kind of power.
No shit.
I've seen everything, Johnny. I've seen the spaces between everything. Life, death, beyond them both. All I wanted was everything. Was that too much?
Spoken like a true toddler.
Ask?
Part of everything is all the ammo in these here guns. This encounter with Maw is a multi-phase boss fight, and he's no pushover. There will be quite a few moments of avoiding his attacks while clearing an area, and it can get tricky. Luckily, you find yourself restocked in between phases, which will pretty much carry you throughout the fight. You'll end up getting less and less real estate to work with throughout this fight too, but even when it's over, it's not over. Taking him out in the final phase is going to trigger this isn't even my final form moment as he just bails on you, leaving you to climb his tower so you can just have yet another boss fight. This time, however, it's actually a one-on-one and he's significantly more dangerous and you have to be even faster. At least you still have the mercy of getting restocked in between each phase. He still tries to get away after kicking his ass all up the tower. This time, don't let the lack of tick marks fool you, there are still phases and restocking. You're still in the boss fight, it's not over yet, only the arenas are going to be entirely different each time. When you finally do it this time though, well, we forgot about Sin. One more level, but this time everything you have learned and can accomplish is going to be put to the test. The combat, the platforming, it all comes to a head here. There are some segments that require you to do it timed too, but the point is that you've only made it here if you've earned it, so you just have to push a bit harder to keep it. Then it happens. The actual final boss, Sin. This fight isn't quite what you expect, or at least it wasn't what I expected. First, the arena is littered with enemies, all kinds of them. Kinds that'll be dangerous to ignore, and they keep pouring in. At first, I thought I had to clear the arena, but after a couple of deaths I realized I could just shoot the giant looming eyeball hovering above the arena that, until this point, I was just dodging the attacks from. She'll also kill the other enemies in the arena too. And then you have a second phase, but that one is much easier, made even more so with the weapon swap damage boost from early on in Chapter 3. And then a third phase. The whole thing keeps going, really, but it progressively gets easier and is more for show. The meat of this fight is the first phase. Eventually, you just climb inside, full chainsaw, and fuck shit up, just as the game is giving that to you in your mission objective. And there you have it, folks. That's how you destroy a computer virus. And when you can kill a virus that damn good, there's always going to be someone ready to profiteer.
That. You remember our good friend, the Doc? The one who slammed a bunch of temporary wiring in your head, keeping you alive? He kept himself a little backup copy. Clever fella. But here's the thing. If you knew we kept your memories in a jar, well, you wouldn't have been what we needed.
Okay, so that's Turbo Overkill. How's it flow? Turbo Overkill is a high-octane first-person shooter that's always looking to up the ante at every turn, all while respecting the rules that it set out beforehand and building on it instead of changing things completely. The game quickly becomes a decadent dance of high mobility versus varied enemy attack patterns and a wide array of ways for you to deal damage to said enemies versus their differing threat levels. It's less of a boomer shooter and more of the kind of shooters that Doom Eternal ushered in. Do we have a specific name for that yet? Anyway, the flow state of Turbo Overkill is a quick risk assessment of your surroundings, followed by systematically choosing the proper weapon for the specific moment you're in to deliver the most punishment to the biggest threats, all while making sure to avoid getting caught up in other hazards and enemies scattered about and using some of the tools on your utility belt to boost your odds of survival. My tool of choice was getting health and armor back when chain sliding the fodder enemies. And sometimes you find yourself throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at these enemies when the game tosses you a new piece for the belt, so you end up throwing the entire fridge too. You really get the feeling that they're trying to stop you and getting better at it, while you're getting better at making them regret their life decisions. And these high-octane moments are punctuated with larger-than-life platforming segments where you're damn near flying half the time, all in a relentless assault on everyone that ever thought about getting in your way. Might as well take a moment here and there to bask in the scenery too. Before you think this game is a bit overwhelming or that you won't be able to keep up, I would encourage you to give Turbo Overkill a try. If it looks, fun but overwhelming, that's fine. There are, of course, a handful of base difficulty settings, and I chose Street Cleaner at first. That's the game's version of your standard hard mode. However, if you're looking for something more specific or want to tailor the experience more to your liking, you can change just about every aspect of difficulty when you start a new game. That'll help to make it a more enjoyable experience. I mean, if you want it more comfortable, there you go. If you want it more challenging, there you go. The core of the game is going to remain the same, which is good because it's a long game. If you're taking your time and exploring, each level has a lot to find and reward you with, and could take reasonably 20 to 30 minutes to complete. Now, the levels. So you have 3 episodes, and 8 levels in each episode, 24. Plus 1 secret level for each regular level that ranges from puzzle levels to wave-based horde survival levels, 48. That's a loaded package. Oh, and to get into those secret levels, you have to find all the collectible cassette tapes, 3 per level, which unlock the corresponding secret level. Then you have tech chips, again 3 per level, that anytime you get all 3, it unlocks something, but this time it's a gameplay modifier. Having so much to it is ultimately a net positive for Turbo Overkill. Repeat playthroughs are obviously going to net much faster clear times, but the core gameplay loop is quick and snappy and offers a lot of room for the player to improve on their skills or take the game on with a new modifier or challenge. So there's quite a few reasons to come back too. It's hard to find drawbacks. I feel like they thought of everything, even showing you what collectibles you missed on each level from the level select screen. However, the augments upgrade system is quite unbalanced, with some augments offering a little boost, or assistance in one area or another, while others can have a dramatic impact on gameplay. I imagine that a lot of people who play Turbo Overkill are going to gravitate toward having a few specific upgrades in the kit at all times, like having double damage every time you switch weapons or turning the micro missiles into cluster bombs, while quickly ignoring other upgrades like a ground stomp from landing after a long fall, or one that makes you hit maximum and minimum velocity much faster when you start and stop moving. I think I can also say that the enemies themselves don't really stand out a lot. I mean, they do, especially later on, but considering a lot of the enemies have the same or similar functions, there's a lot less to worry about in any one specific moment versus another. And the AI is not doing anything unique here. Every time you see an enemy, it will be doing the exact same thing as the last time you saw that specific enemy type. So with that in mind, once you do become comfortable with how the game functions and flows, it's actually not as challenging as you'd think. That's the trick though. At the high velocity gameplay you come to Turbo Overkill for, it masks all that with speed and focusing on what the player can do to the enemies instead of what the enemies can do to the player. The whole package really is something between Boomer Shooter and something like Doom Eternal. It fits snugly between these two camps with semi-open-ended level design, arena-focused combat, encouragement to swap weapons frequently, and a whole arsenal of extra tools at your disposal. It's then matched with the frenetic combat, broken up with exploration and platforming in a beautiful environment, meshed together with upgrades and loadouts, and slathered in ridiculously over-the-top story. I had a good time with Turbo Overkill, and I think you will too. It'll also give you a lot to keep coming back for to make the whole package worth the cost of entry. I have to give this one my seal of approval. Flawed, sure, a little bit, but pretty great. Check it out. And on that note, thanks for listening to me prattle on. Soup Can Tactics out.